Welcome into Boston Celtics Today by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Jayson. I hope all of your weeks are off to a great start. Celtics start to their season hasn't really been good as they sit here in the early going at 2-4, and because of that, some people are talking about potential roster upgrades so that the Celtics team can get back to Eastern Conference title contention. So it's been somewhat of a frustrating, maddening, inconsistent start to the season for Boston as they have begun the year at 2-4, and it's eerily similar to last year in terms of the effort being in and out, the consistency not necessarily being there, and it just doesn't look like a team that's gelling in the early going. Now, I expected them to have a little bit of a learning curve under first-year head coach Ime Udoka, but when you play for the Boston Celtics, and when fans root this team on, there's pressure for them to be a winning basketball team year in and year out. Now, what we're focusing in on today's show is the fact that Jeff Goodman, Chris Forsberg, guys who contribute and work for NBC Sports Boston, have such great intel into this organization. They're already putting some feelers out there and discussing potential upgrades to the roster to try and make this a better team around Jayson Tatum as well as Jaylen Brown. We start off with what Chris Forsberg had to say recently on NBC Sports Boston. Quote, "To be fair, it certainly worked the last time the Celtics needed a third piece to pair next to a pair of high-scoring all-star wings." Yeah, you remember how that worked out. Title time, baby. But watching the Celtics struggle with focus and intensity the past two seasons, it's fair to wonder if motor and drive is as important to the next player as the overall talent. It would help to find a player with a combination of both. Maybe a pass-first point guard who's relentless, motor, doesn't allow teammates to take possessions off, or a floor-stretching four that ensures a championship or bust mentality based on previous failures. With Bradley Beal and Jayson Tatum sharing the court twice in 4 days, the speculation about whether they might someday desire to pair up is bound to percolate again. Yeah, I'm here for it. Beal, who has pledged heavy allegiance to the Washington Wizards, can ink a 5-year max salary deal next summer. Lastly, his ability to create for himself and others would pair nicely with Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. However, a monster usage rate, his defensive woes, and a declining three-point shot fly counter to what might be ideal to pair alongside a Tatum-Brown core. And we've talked relentlessly about Bradley Beal here on Boston Celtics Today because him and Jayson Tatum were childhood friends. They both went to Chaminade Academy in the St. Louis area. But I'm not sure how a trade for Bradley Beal would even be feasible or even be possible without including Jaylen Brown in that deal, because if I'm the Washington Wizards, Bradley Beal has not requested a trade yet. I think he likes this roster construction right now because it's more less top heavy and has more depth than it did last year when it was really just Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. You're playing Raul Neto in a playoff game. But if I'm Washington, I'm not trading away Bradley Beal without including Jaylen Brown in that deal, who's one of the top two-way young players and continues to just ascend right before our eyes and develop at a ridiculous rate. So before we continue to dive further into this potential trade, what would you give up for Bradley Beal? Some might part ways with a Jaylen Brown. I'm personally not. And then other than that, are you going to gut the roster for just one player? Let me know right now in the comment section. Also, Celtics fans, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do so right now. We continue to grow very, very quickly here on Celtics Today by Chat Sports, and it's all thanks to you for continuing to support us. But for those of you who haven't subscribed, do so right now. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. All the videos we push out are free, and we have you covered with the latest Celtics news and rumors. Let's take a look at Bradley Beal, the player this year, as compared to what he was last year. His numbers have actually dipped a lot from a year ago into 2021, 2022, and it's kind of weird. I'm not sure it's because some of those rule changes aren't as advantageous to offensive players like they were in years past when you could do that hand check and really absorb and create contact. Those calls no longer being called by officiating crews, and I think it's made the game of basketball better. But guys like Bradley Beal, James Harden, and Damian Lillard, their numbers in the early going down a lot from a year ago, and I think it's because some of those offensive rule changes. Bradley Beal this year, 24.5 points per game, a little more than 6 rebounds, which is actually pretty high for him, but he's shooting a measly 36% from the field and less than 22% from distance. You compare these numbers to what he did last year, not even close, when he was second in the NBA scoring title race behind Steph Curry. 31.3 points per game. It was by far and away his best year of his career. 4.7 rebounds, but here's where the focus is. The field goal percentage was at almost 49, and his three-point percentage at almost 35. Once again, those numbers down a lot from a year ago, but I bet on the player to adjust, to adapt, and get better, more used to those rule changes, and I think those numbers for Bradley Beal are going to be on the uptick. I'm not really worried about the dip in production. I'm a believer in the player, and I know Bradley Beal loves playing the game of basketball. The dude is a straight-up hooper, a straight-up walking bucket. He's a guy, you give him the basketball and you're like, hey, you're a threat to score as soon as you cross half court. And I have confidence in him that those numbers are going to get back to those averages that he was putting up over the last couple of years. I think this year so far is the outlier, but Beal's probably okay with it because the Wizards, a top 5 team right now in the Eastern Conference. More snippets from that story from Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston, him just talking about improving the roster. Here's a couple of ways they're able to do that. Utilizing upwards of $20 million in cap space next summer to supplement the core of this team. That's not enough to chase the Beals of the world, but it might allow the Celtics to make an impact addition. Think about how Chicago plucked Lonzo Ball this past summer. He continued on by saying the Celtics would preserve a core of Tatum, Brown, Smart, Robert Williams, Peyton Pritchard, and Aaron Nesmith in that instance, but would have to otherwise trim salary, including the final partially guaranteed year on Al Horford's contract. Here's another thing that I was also thinking about. Like, at what point do we kind of grow a little bit concerned about the tandem and the pairing of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown not working out? There has been some playoff success. There's no question about that. But if this year ends up being a lot like last year and these concerning trends continue, do you think about maybe breaking that tandem up? If that's the case, you do want to side with having Jayson Tatum over Jaylen Brown because I think he's the better player. I'm still of the belief and I'm still of the notion that Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown can be a long-term pairing. These guys are only still under the age of 25. They're two at the best at their respective positions in the league. Both wings, yes. I'm talking more about Jaylen Brown being a very good defensive player. Jayson Tatum has every offensive move in that arsenal in his pocket. So I do think that the tandem can work, but at what point do we get worried? I don't know. Maybe let me know in the comment section when I ask you this next question before we get out of here. Are you concerned about the Celtics right now? Because they're off to that 2-4 start. And a lot of the issues surfacing that we're seeing play out are the same issues that we were talking about last year right here on the channel. Type C for you're still concerned. Type E for it's still early. Subscribe to the channel. Let's get to 10,000 subs. We're bringing you the latest Celtics news and rumors, and thanks for watching today's show.